The floor is yours when you want to
Thanks,
grab
Mr. Chair, and my questions will be for Professor Good. Really enjoyed your feedback today. Russians don't handle defeat well. We saw in the 1905 Russo-Japanese War, less than a decade or so later, they got rid of the Tsars. In the 1980s, the defeats in Afghanistan probably led to the fall of the Soviet Union. Do you think Ukraine in 2022, with the setbacks we've seen at Kyiv, could spell the end of the Putin regime in a number of years?
It's an important question. I think that the biggest wild card here is awareness of the extent of casualties and whether or not those will actually sort of impact public opinion. At the moment, it's difficult to predict, but it is very clear that the number of casualties are being played down on the Russian side. There has been also some speculation that the use of groups of volunteers as well as ordinary soldiers from parts of Russia, like the Caucasus, are specifically aimed to ensure that casualties are primarily ethnic minorities. And as a result, they will not resonate as widely through Russian public opinion, which is 80% ethnically Russian.
Thank you for that. Sorry, I've only got a limited amount of time. We've seen how oil and gas has been funding Putin's war machine. All this equipment they're losing in Ukraine must be costing their treasury quite a bit. But we've also seen reports that over the last few decades, Russians have been funding, groups that seek to oppose the development of oil and gas resources in the West and in other areas. How effective do you think the Russians have been at using this sort of propaganda to ensure that Europe particularly remains dependent on Russian energy?
I don't want to speculate because I don't have any specific data on that. I will say this. I think that Europe, it's well known that Europe turned primarily to Russian energy as what was appeared to be a stable alternative to Middle Eastern energy, especially from the 1990s onwards. And a lot of that, I think, was not so much to do with Russian propaganda, although certainly I can see that it would play a role in terms of ensuring that public sentiment within areas which have traditionally been more cordial towards Russia and parts of old Europe, remains opposed to the weaning Europe off of Russian energy.
Thank you for that. We've seen some reports of people canceling certain aspects of Russian culture, like Dostoevsky. But I really appreciate, your recommendation about supporting Russian exiles and emigre communities as a means to provide a bulwark against Putin's regime. Do you think that this cancel culture, which we've seen not from governments necessarily, but it would be unhelpful to, supporting Russian emigres?
I do. I think that there are some things that make sense insofar as a lot of this has been focused on, for instance, the canceling of appearances or competitions by Russian sports competitors. But sports has been an important source of Russia's soft power and an important part of its claim to international legitimacy. And so there is a rationale there. I think more broadly, though, it's important to remember that nobody does a better job at canceling Russians than the Russian government. And that's the thing that really needs to drive our support for immigrants and exiles that can be allies.
And I only have a little bit of time left, but we've seen a lot of Russian propaganda saying they're fighting fascism in Ukraine. Do you think that has been an effective narrative for the past few years, spreading disinformation in the West about the far right in Ukraine as a real threat?
10 seconds, please.
I would say very briefly, yes, it has been effective and has been a stable part of Russian propaganda.
Thank you very much.